Hey out there, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Office Hours with Bob Ross. Before we get started, make sure you check the link in the show notes where you will find a link to my courses and lessons at musiclessons.com, where I cover a variety of topics and things dealing with the guitar in particular, but it could also be applied to other instruments as well. All right, today's topic, let's discuss probably one thing that I have a very difficult time with. And I think that in the music world, in arts, there's a lot of people that probably have a very similar struggle. And it seems maybe kind of silly, but the struggle, the thing that really gets me is acknowledging small wins. I can tell you that the likelihood of me acknowledging any sort of accomplishment that I make in practice, performance, career-wise, it just probably isn't going to happen. Now, some of you out there can definitely relate to this. For me, it's not about that. It's not about acknowledging the wins, acknowledging the accomplishments. To me, it's a never-ending process, a never-ending journey to continuously improve, or to continuously just keep my head down and pushing ahead. For me, taking time to acknowledge any sort of accomplishments has always come across as a bit of a waste. And it's really because I don't acknowledge these sort of wins, any sort of accomplishment at all. I don't acknowledge those as really being accomplishments. They're glimpses of things. And once I attain something that I'm going for, I move right on. Now, let's take a look at the good and the bad. So the bad is that whenever there's an accomplishment made, and I achieve any sort of progress, there's never a solidifying of that. And without solidifying the accomplishment that is made, then the mind will continue to push ahead into acknowledging that perhaps there was no progress being made. If you don't purposely acknowledge it and think about it, then nothing really happened. You'll just keep pushing ahead. And if you continue doing that for long periods of time, my experience has been that there's never a sense of you've hit this, now you're into this next phase. And that can be incredibly difficult. Like, there's some of you out there that if that's the case, where you don't acknowledge something like this, and there is no sort of, I don't want to say a finite point, because there is no finality to it. You're constantly pushing forward. But if there's no sort of mark that you hit and you acknowledge, for some of you, having that constant pushing ahead without any acknowledgement either by yourself or others, for you that may be detrimental, and then you back away from trying to push ahead. Now, if you're in the same sort of mindset that I'm in, not having that acknowledgement either by myself or others, it doesn't really mean anything to me, because my mindset is such that, okay, you hit a mark, but now you just got to keep moving. Don't stop and take the time, because in doing so, now you're wasting time to push ahead. You're hyping up something that, yes, you've done this, you accomplished it, but you're hyping on something that is very minute. And for me, that works. But again, the bad side is that there is no sort of a mark. There's no sort of break in order to acknowledge that now there's another level. No matter how small it is, there's another level that you've hit now. So the good, from my experience, is I don't get caught up in that. So not having the acknowledgement from myself or from others, that's fine. That doesn't stop me from every day getting up and continuing to push ahead. I understand that there's things that I need to work on, and I see that component of it. And knowing that there's something more to do and more to accomplish, that's what drives me. Not acknowledging a win, but just knowing the fact that I haven't got to the point that I'm trying to get to, which this point is not a finite point. This is this whole music thing. And I've talked about this a while back ago about this idea that Simon Sinek, if you haven't heard of him, check him out. When he talks about the infinite and the finite game. Music is not a finite game. It's infinite. You can continue to push forward. You can continue to take one component and work it to death for long periods of time and still find something else to do. Every day when I pick up my guitar, there's something else that I can figure out, something else that I can do, things that I acknowledge that need work. There's always another day to get up and to do something else. I understand that it never stops. That's the infinite game. Whenever you, for me to, be okay with this idea of not acknowledging small wins, understanding that it's an infinite game is what does it for me. That's the mindset I'm in. If I look at it, and I don't necessarily think that people see it as a finite, depending on your level, what, you're pursuing in music. Some people may actually see it as a finite game. Some people may look at, once I get so many songs down, maybe they're in a cover band, they do something for fun. They look at it as, once I hit this, it's a finite game, and then I got to what the place I wanted to be, and I'm okay with that. And this is where it ends as far as trying to make any further progress. Now, for them, maybe that is a finite game. But the acknowledgement of small wins, like I said in the beginning, has been a struggle for me. From time to time, and anyone who knows me, is familiar with me, knows that I read a lot, I understand that there is a multitude of resources out there, things that talk about acknowledging these small improvements. I understand that, and there are times if I really stop and think about it for a moment, then I can understand how it feels like a constant, or can feel like a constant grind, and you're trying to push ahead and it feels like it's going nowhere. And if I would just stop and say, you know what? You did manage to get to another place in your plane. Look back a year ago. Where were you a year ago? Compare that. Because this whole thing, and not to go too off topic here into something else, this whole comparison thing, you can have some motivation from observing others, but this whole idea of like comparing and all this crap, like I don't go down that road. Like that's not where you want to be. But if you compare yourself to where you were a year ago, 2 years ago, however long ago, even months ago, and you see those improvements, then taking the time to acknowledge it, I can understand is a worthwhile investment. Because otherwise, you may get into more of a negative mindset. And I'm sure that you can relate to that. Any of us, I'm sure at some point has done that. For me, it's a lot easier to acknowledge a more negative mindset on this and to say, you know what? Yeah, you can do this. You were working at it. Maybe I managed to book a gig someplace, and I'd been pushing to get in someplace. And I'm like, oh, well, you should be happy about that. And in my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, but what's next? And you hear what I just said there. Yeah, but, well, here comes the excuses you start saying to yourself, right? Even the excuses to give yourself a compliment. That's something that I can definitely acknowledge about myself as the excuse to even recognize anything that I've done. So, at least for the sake of building yourself up, and don't get obsessed with it. That's the thing that I would say. Don't get obsessed with constantly trying to congratulate yourself. Understand that there's difficulties there and that you're working to progress. Be okay with the fact that you hit something, but it's not where you want to be yet, and keep going. Now, some do advocate for constantly celebrating the small wins. To me, in my mindset, if I'm constantly celebrating the small wins, then that's just taken away from where I need to go. And that's worked for me. On the other hand, if the small wins work for you, acknowledging those on a regular basis, then go for it. But I would almost guarantee that there's some of you out there at least that relate to what I'm saying about these small wins. And will go right along with me in this that doesn't really do much for you. But at least try it. So for me, maybe this is just a push towards telling myself to acknowledge it from time to time, and have some of you join me in on doing this as well. Acknowledge yourself from time to time. You don't have to go and boast and brag and put things up on social media about it. I'm not saying that. I'm saying just stop and think to yourself for a moment. You know what? I'm able to do something that I wasn't able to do before, and I'm getting better. And then move on. Think about the next step and just hunker down, put your head down, and understand that this whole music thing is an infinite game. And your goal is to get a little bit better every day. All right, thanks for listening. Make sure to subscribe, leave a rating, and don't forget to leave a comment to let me know if there's any particular thing that you would like for me to discuss about music in future episodes. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you next time on Office Hours with Bob Ross.